December 16, 1773. That's a date that no one remembers, but it's an important date in history. And all because of some tea. Let me explain. Okay, so let's imagine you're living in Boston in 1773. Life is pretty good. You get to enjoy the best that the British Empire has to offer. Protection from other countries, a booming economy, and most importantly, cheap British tea. But there's a problem. The British government recently passed something called the Tea Act, which basically gives a monopoly on tea sales to the British East India Company. Except this company isn't even based in America. So Americans are like, great, now we can't buy tea. And the British are like, oh, you can still buy tea, but now you have to buy it from us. And the Americans are like, wait a minute, we already buy our tea from you. We just don't want to buy it from your company. But the British are like, yes, but now you have to. And the Americans are like, why? And the British are like, because we're the government and also because your harbour stinks. Oh, wait, sorry. What was that? You can't hear me. I'm sorry. It's just that your harbour stinks. And they were trying to make up for the expense of the 7 Years' War, and they thought, hey, let's tax these guys, and they won't even notice. But they did notice. They noticed quite a lot. And they were mad. And so they formed a group called the Sons of Liberty, whose mission was to do one thing: get rid of British taxes. Now they had tried everything, from petitions to protests to even a boycott of British goods. But the British government wouldn't budge. In fact, they doubled down and sent more troops to America to enforce the law. And the Americans were like, you know what, fine. Hey, we've got a harbour, right? And they decided to have a little party. Now this wasn't just any party. It was a very angry party. And it went down in history, the Boston Tea Party. On December 16, 1773, a group of about 100 men snuck onto 3 ships, carrying British tea in the Boston harbour, and dumped 92,000 pounds of tea into the water. It was the biggest mass destruction of property in American history up until that point, and it was just the beginning. Soon other colonies joined the fight against British taxes with protests of their own. Now I could tell you that the British government eventually repealed the Tea Act, but I'd be lying, because they didn't. They actually kept the Tea Act, but they passed a whole bunch of other acts, like the Intolerable Acts, which closed the port of Boston until the people paid for the tea. But this didn't stop the growing tension between Britain and America. In fact, it made things worse, much, much worse. Like the American Revolution worse. And then after that, things were just awkward between them for a while. But why do we remember this story today? Well, for starters, it shows us that sometimes you just gotta dump stuff in the ocean. I mean, just look at this guy. He's having the time of his life. But really, we remember this story because it shows us how the American Revolution began. One of the most important events in American history. It was a revolution that created a new nation. A nation built on the idea that everyone should have representation in their government. A government that would protect its citizens and their property. A government that would allow them to make decisions about how they were governed. It was an idea that spread throughout the world, inspiring people to fight for their own freedom, like the French Revolution, or the Russian Revolution, or the Cuban Revolution, or the Iranian Revolution, or the American Revolution. And it's an idea that continues to inspire people today, whether it's the Arab Spring, or the protests in Hong Kong, or the protests in America. People are still fighting for the same basic idea. The idea that everyone should have a say in how they're governed. So next time someone tells you that you can't change the world, just break the law and dump some tea in the ocean. It's me. This has been the Boston Tea Party. If you want to hear more stories like this, hit the subscribe button. And if you want to hear more stories about the American Revolution, check out the series in the description below.